Welcome back. It's good to see that no one took the opportunity to escape. It's the first day, you're still forgiving, I think. So I'm going to talk about desirability now. I'm going to focus on that one topic and then use that as a starting point for the rest of the day. This thing is much less responsive than you are. It's become totally irresponsive at this point. Oh. No, it's dead. Yeah. Okay, I'll have to use the cursors. Ah, now it's working. Okay, so apparently the screen must be active for this to work for some reason. Okay, so desirability. Let me explain the basic setup. This is something that I've already been talking about before. There is some variable that assumes values in some set, and I will denote that set by the script x. So script x is the set of the possible values of my variable, and I'm going to look at the case, the special case. It's already more than difficult enough, where this set is finite. So I have a finite number of elements in that set, x1 through xn. So let's say that we have n elements in that set. And our variable denoted by capital, uppercase, x. So we will use uppercase for something we don't know, and we will use lowercase for something that we do know, or for something generic as a notation, as is typical in probability theory. And so you're uncertain about the value of this variable x, capital X. U is a subject that I assume to be rational, or at least trying to be rational, aiming to be rational. Okay, so I'll call that subject U. The possibility space, the set of all the possible values, is finite. So that is a number of conventions. The notion of a gamble I've already talked about. It's an uncertain reward, and the value depends on the value that this variable assumes in X. So there are a number of possible values, one for each possible value of X. So I have this, all the possible values for X are X1 through Xn, and then all the possible values for this gamble, which is a function of X, gx of X1, g of X2, g of Xn through g of Xn. So those are the possible values. And since I'm uncertain about X, then I will typically also be uncertain about the value of X. Unless g is a constant, then I'm, of course, there is no uncertainty, but typically I'll be uncertain about this, the value of this gamble. So a gamble in general is a function from the set of all the possible values of my variable to the set of real values. So an uncertain reward. And I'll assume here that these rewards, the values that they are expressed in units of some utility scale that is linear. So I'm going to assume that to make things as easy, as simple as possible. All utility, all the values of the rewards are expressed in utility that is linear. So that utility of the sum of two things is the sum of the utilities. Okay, now important is that a gamble itself is completely determined by the n tuple of its values, g of x and x, and this is an element of Rn. So this means that I can represent any gamble on this space as a point in this n-dimensional space. That's basically what I've been doing so far in 2 dimensions, in 3 dimensions. Now I'm going to be more abstract. It's going to be in n dimensions. So a gamble is just a point in an n-dimensional space. And this means that the set of all the gambles, and I will denote that, it's a notation that I'll use often, L stands for linear. L of X is the linear space of all the gambles. So it's the set of all the gambles. It's a linear space. Why? Because I can. It's isomorphic to Rn. Each gamble is a point in Rn. I can add 2 points I can multiply points with real numbers, so it's a linear space. And I'm going to use the idea that this is a linear space, because this will allow us to do geometry. Yeah? And we use ideas in geometry. This is very common in probability theory. Probability theory and linear algebra are closely related in a sense, and this is also what's going to happen here. We'll use that geometrical flavor of the theory to get insight into things. Right, so this is the basic setup. Let's now introduce preference and desirability. Very basic. I'm going to assume that your beliefs, the beliefs that you have about what value that this variable assumes in the set, may lead you to prefer one uncertain reward over another. So suppose that you're certain that your x is going to be x1, and the value of your gamble g in x1 is higher than the second gamble h in x1, then you will prefer g to h. That's a very simple example of the idea that whatever you believe about x may lead you to strictly prefer one uncertain reward over another. And we're going to denote that by g is strictly preferred to h. So I'm going to make no distinction between g of x and g. Yeah, so the g, a gamble, is just an uncertain reward. It's a function of this variable x. Yeah.
So can I do a couple of x rather than variables?
No, just okay. Maybe I said random variable.
No, you did. I was just
saying variable.
Yeah, variable is variable.
So could you? Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. So the question was, there's a bit of confusion between random variable and variable, where random variable in probability theory is typically defined as a function from a measurable space to another measurable space, or space, whatever. I'm not going to do that here. A variable is just something. My definition of a variable is something that whose value I don't know. I don't know it. It's very simple. I don't need a function or anything. It's just something that it's something that assumes values in a set, and I don't know the value. That's yeah. So it's like a primitive notion. Yeah? I don't define it. I don't define it. It's just primitive. Yeah. Okay. Then. So I have introduced a binary relation between two things, yeah, a binary relation on a set of all the gambles. And I'm going to make a number of assumptions about this binary relation. I'm going to assume that it is a strict weak ordering. What does strict weak ordering mean? It means these two things. It means something more, but I'm going to come back to that later. So first of all, it is irreflexive. So the gamble is never strictly preferred to itself. That's basic. Strictly prefer, that's the notion of strict. You can't prefer something strictly to itself. So that is not really an assumption. And then the second is that it's transitive. Yeah? The idea being that if this relation is not transitive, then it could be used to become, or you could become a utility pump. Just keep on doing the preferences and keep giving money to others. So that is a relation, the first one. So if G1 is greater than G2 and G2 is greater than G3, then G1 must also be transitive. Specifically also an anti-symmetry relationship there, but we will see that it is implied by the other ones. So I haven't mentioned it explicitly. Okay, then another, and this is, we're going to assume that it's a strict vector ordering, and this is related to the linearity of the utility scale. So strict vector ordering means, this is something that I've already written down here. If G1 is greater than G2, then if I add the same vector or the same gamble to both sides of equality, then the equality is zero. So that is the compatibility with the addition, and there's also compatibility with scalar multiplication. If I have a positive number, then multiplying both sides of the equality with that positive scalar factor does not change the ordering. So that is the basic idea of a strict, in this case, a strict vector ordering. Those are two assumptions that I make. And then the last one is that it respects strict dominance. So if one gamble is, there's two types of relationships. So there's two types of notation here. I'm drawing your attention to the difference between the two. This is a bit curly. This is my preference ordering. That means better. This is a background ordering that I have. It is a dominance, a strict dominance ordering. So what do I mean by dominance? A gamble is greater than or equal to another gamble if it is greater than or equal to in all of its values. It's everywhere greater than or equal to the other one. This is a dominance, and strict dominance just means it's greater than or equal and not equal. So it means that it is at least as large everywhere and in at least one point larger. That is what I mean by strict dominance here. Thank you, Arthur. And so the idea is that if one gamble is, so this is a background ordering, meaning that irrespective of any beliefs that I have about X, this will always be present, this weak order, this ordering that I have here, this strict ordering. So as soon as this holds, I, as a rational subject, must also respect this ordering in my private beliefs. So that is the basic idea. Is this clear? Yeah? Sorry? Yeah, sorry. I said weak, but that was something that I should have said. Yeah. So this one here, this is the weak version of the strict version. That's what I. There's some people worried about the videos. I keep getting. Okay. So one thing to note already is that there may be gambles that are two pairs of gambles that are incomparable in the sense that I have a gamble G and a gamble H, and it doesn't hold that G is greater than H, and it doesn't hold that H is greater than G. Then H and G are incomparable. They're not related by this ordering relationship. So that's what I mean by incomparable, and that's what I mean by incomparable. And the idea is that if this happens, it can be for two reasons. Either it's because this is a strict ordering. It could be because, to me, G and H are equivalent to each other. And then if they are equivalent to each other, then G will not be greater or better than H, and H will not be better than G if they're equivalent. That could be one reason why there is incomparability. Another reason is if they're not equivalent and not better, in either sense, there could be a third reason, namely that they are simply incomparable. There's nothing I can say about them. They're not equivalent, and neither of them is better than the other one. They are incomparable, really incomparable. And I'm allowing for that. I'm allowing for partial preference. We're not excluding. That's one thing to say already. Okay, so how do we get from this ordering to a notion of desirability? Well, quite simply, because of the vector property, the compatibility with vector addition. If the gamble G is greater than H, then I can subtract, or I can add minus H to both sides without changing the order. And so that will imply that G minus H is strictly greater or strictly better, rather than H minus H, and H minus H is 0. So this means that G being greater than H is equivalent to G minus H being better than 0. And this holds for any two gambles G and H. And therefore, what it tells me, I've given a little pictorial representation of this idea here. I have a gamble G and a gamble H. This is minus H, and I'm adding this one. And so G is better than H if this one here is better than 0. That's the idea. So this means, of course, that this ordering here, this my preference ordering, my strict preference ordering, is completely determined by the gambles that are positive, that are strictly better than 0. So in order to define this ordering, On all gambles, all I need to know is whether which gambles are strictly greater than 0. So if I know this set, D, set of all gambles that U strictly prefers to 0, then this set completely determines this order. They're in a one-to-one relationship with each other. And so this is what I call your set of desirable gambles. So I will call a set desirable if you strictly prefer it to the status quo, to the 0. That is what we call set desirable. And so this completely determines the ordering. This is really basic vector ordering stuff. Now, remember that I had a number of basic assumptions about the preference ordering, currently preference, about this preference ordering. You can derive these 4 axioms, they're actually equivalent to the axioms that I specified before. So the weak ordering axioms, the strict ordering axioms, and the vector ordering are equivalent to these 4 axioms. The first one tells me that 0 is not desirable. 0 is not strictly preferred to itself. That is the reflexivity condition. Second one says that if a gamble is positive, positive in the sense of the of the ordering that of the dominance, the strict dominance that I had before. So this means that all the values of G are non-negative and at least one of them is positive. Yeah? If that holds, then the gamble must be desirable as well. It must be in that set of desirable values. Third says that the set of desirable gambles D, the set of all the gambles that I think are desirable, is closed under addition. And the last property says that it is closed under scaling, under positive scaling. I have a strictly positive real number. So if I have any gamble that is in that set, then all its positive multiples are also in that set. So the entire real line that goes through the origin, the positive real line that goes through the origin, that starts at the origin and goes through that point, will also be in the set. That is what coherence is. So these 4 axioms are equivalent to the axioms that we had before, the properties, the assumptions that we had before. So this is now the basic concept of preference that we're going to use. It's quite simple. So the idea is graphically that 0, so red means forbidden, 0 is forbidden, never desirable. Green means always there. So in this case, all the positive gambles, so the gambles that are either on one of the 2 axes or inside, but not 0, are in there. That is the second axiom. Yeah? So the first orthant minus the origin. And then closed under addition and positive multiplication means that it is a convex cone. It's closed under positive combinations. So this set of desirable gambles is a convex cone that always includes this green region and never red. Also never, sorry, too quick. Also never the other red region. Why? So why?
Because they should.
Sorry?
Because probability should be positive.
It doesn't. Well, why does it need to be positive? It doesn't need to be positive, right? It must be positive. Positive is enough. Why is negative never?
Because the minus those are positive, so those are.
Yeah, indeed. So if I take anyone here, it's in there. Yeah. Suppose that. Sorry, take anyone here. Suppose it's in there. Its negation, so its minus will be in the green region, so it will also be there, and the sum of the 2 is 0, and that must also be there. It can't be there because of the plus. So red is forbidden. So it cannot. So there can be no negative gambles in that set of desirable gambles. Yeah, that's forbidden. All right, and then the fact that it's a positive cone. also says, so it must include the first quadrant, which is a convex cone, and it cannot include 0. So this is a possible set of desirable gambles in 2 dimensions. 3 dimensions, it's again a convex cone that includes the first quadrant, and that doesn't have 0, and so on in n dimensions. It's a very easy, simple, graphical interpretation. Okay, what about the border? I haven't said anything about the border. In this case, the border could be in there, but remember, 0 count. So fat line means that the border is in there. It's possible. And I haven't said anything about this. It's possible. It's not excluded by these axioms. Another possibility is that one border is, but the other isn't. So I'm indicating that by this dotted line. That's perfectly reasonable because the axioms do not preclude it.
Sorry. In terms of inference, does it really make a huge difference if you have the border or if you
Sorry?
in terms of inference, I want to do some inference. Does it really make a difference if I include the border or
If you want your models to be Archimedean, if you want your models to be completely determined by real numbers, then this won't be the case. This is a non-Archimedean model. As soon as you impose Archimedeanity on your models, this behavior is going to change. But if you want to allow for this, then this is kind of behavior that you state. So this is, we do this, it's going to make a difference. It's not going to make a difference if you impose Archimedeanity afterwards, then borders will be either all excluded, I'll talk about that, all excluded or all included. But we're not saying anything about this here. So this model need not be argued. It allows for enough generality. Right, so this is a model where the borders are completely excluded. This is an open cone. The borders are not in there. So what happens now is, let me look at that cone, and I'm going to try and make it larger. I'm going to keep adding gambles to it that were not already in there, and I'm making it larger and larger and larger. At some point, I have to stop, because why can't I keep adding gambles? It's going to have to stop at some point, and that point is when I reach some kind of semi-plane or semi-space. Why?
We'll have to give some theory.
Yeah, indeed. So if I go further, I will for some of those gambles end up in the red region. If I have a gamble, let me see, if I have a gamble here and a gamble here, yeah, and I add it, I end up in the red region. So as soon as I go beyond a semi-space, I typically make sure that I end up in the red region. So I can't go further than a semi-space. Or some, yeah. Not saying anything about the borders, but the semi-space seems to be as far as I can go. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what semi-space is.
Semi-space is like it's like you have a line here in 2 dimensions. It's just a half plane. Yeah. In 3 dimensions, you have a plane, and then everything on one side of the plane. So a half space, semi-space. So I can't go further. Right, what are those models? In general, what do they make you think of? These semi-spaces.
If it's half, there's no decision.
There's no decision indeed, yeah, but so they're associated with something that we know in this case.
Target.
They're associated with probabilities. Yeah. The idea is that if I take that this is all the gambles in the green region are gambles whose expectation with respect to some probability are positive or zero at the border. So the line, the border line, defines a line through the origin. And that line through the origin has a normal, and that normal, if I make things right, that normal line defines probability. So the idea is that these, if I have a maximum as great as possible, as large as possible, then it's somehow related to probabilities. Then they are related. But if not, if they are cones, not half spaces, then they're more general than probabilities. That is an idea. Okay. Again, suppose that they're like this. Then again, I can start including certain borders, like I can include this border, but not zero, and this could be excluded. So here it could be open, or the other way around. But I can't make this and this closed, because if it were closed, then the zero would also have to be in there. So that's impossible. Another thing that could be possible is both of them open. In more dimensions, it becomes much more complicated, because then my cone can have many facets. Yeah? So these are just two facets here. Typically, in 2 dimensions, you have. If I go back, 2 facets, 2 sides, 2 vertices. In 3 dimensions, this is why I said in the beginning, the difference between 2 and 3 dimensions is enormous. In 3 dimensions, you can have all kinds of different faces to that cone. So the convex, but it can be very complicated. And some parts of it can be open, some parts of it can be closed, very complicated.
It's a semi-space.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you can be identified with that set of gambles can be identified with a precise probability?
Yeah, I can explain. I'm going to explain later in detail. Yeah? I'm coming back to your question. Yeah.
And how does it go from even higher dimension? It doesn't become intractable.
What do you mean by intractable?
Like the amount of different borders over closing is very big.
Can be become intractable. But intractable, complicated to specify. Yeah. But I'm coming to that as well. So, but it's good that you keep anticipating what I'm going to say, because that's the plan of my talk was well thought through. Or that you have similar thought processes to mine, which is also something that reassures me. So this is the notion of gambles and desirability. And I'm now going to explain to you that there is a notion of conservative inference behind that. I'm going to be a bit more explicit than before. So remember, when you state that a gamble is desirable, and I'm also going to denote it like this, so you state that this gamble G is desirable. This means that this G belongs to your set of desirable gambles also. So the idea is to strictly prefer it to the zero gamble or to the status quo. Okay, let's look at a number of simple assessments. I'm going to look at the gamble G minus mu, where mu is a real number. This is something that I already talked about in the previous presentation. Graphically speaking, mu is the constant gamble. So all the constant gambles are on this line. Here, the blue dotted line, these are all the constant gambles. They give the same value, whatever the outcome, whatever the value. So that's the idea. Those are all the constant gambles. And so G minus mu, if I have a G here, and I subtract or I add a constant gamble to it, the gambles that are of this form are on this blue line. So what I do is I draw a straight line parallel to this blue dotted line through the gamble G. That's what happens geometrically. And then if mu is positive, then G minus mu will be below, towards the negative gambles, the negative values. And so if G increases, if mu increases, then G minus mu will move along this line in this direction. That's what happens. Okay. And then if mu decreases, becomes negative, then I go in this direction. Now, if you say that G minus mu is desirable to you, this means that remember, G is this uncertain reward, mu is something that is fixed, means that you're willing to buy G for a price mu. Mu minus G, in this case, what happens? So I take minus G, mu minus G is this, so I have minus G here, and then I have the line through parallel to this dotted line through this point. And as mu increases, these gammas go towards the more positive ones. So I get in this direction. Mu minus G, what happens? I give away G, because there's a minus in front of it, and in return, I get mu. So I'm selling the gamma G for a fixed price mu. I'm willing to sell, or you are willing to sell the gamma G for a price mu. That transaction is strictly desirable to you. Yeah.
Are those 2% mutually exclusive?
Are those two things mutually exclusive?
Yes.
No. I'll come back to that later. Yeah. These are possible things that you could do for some mu. So you could have this one for some certain value of mu, and then for another value, call it mu prime, you could have the other prime. Well, of course, if you have the same mu here, then you can't have both, because the sum is 0. Okay, that's what you meant probably. Yeah, okay, you can't have both together, because the sum is 0 and 0 can't be. A special case where the gamble is an indicator. So what is an indicator? We'll be using this many times, so it's useful to explain what I mean by an indicator. An event is a subset of the set of the possible values. The indicator is the function, is the gamble that assumes the value 1 on A and 0 outside. So it's a special gamble, call it the indicator, call it the event. So this gamble, indicator of A minus alpha, if my outcome is in A, then I get 1 minus alpha. If my outcome is not in A, then I get minus alpha. If you accept this gamble, this means that you're willing to bet on the event A at what's called the betting rate alpha. That is the definition of a betting rate. And then similarly, alpha minus the indicator is you're willing to bet against A at a betting rate 1 minus alpha. That is betting on events. So these are very simple things that you might find desirable, gambles that you might find desirable, and we'll come across later on. Okay, now let's go to the logic behind desirability. You, the subject, you make a number of desirability statements. You say, okay, I think that this gamble is desirable, and I think that this gamble is desirable, and there's another gamble there that is desirable. So you give a number of gambles, a set of gambles. I will call that script A, and this is all the set of all the gambles for which you have given a desirability statement. So you tell me, I think this gamble is desirable, and this one, and this one, and this one. So typically, if you are a normal person, you will give me a finite number of gambles that are desirable. Yet to come across somebody who gives me an infinite number of gambles and say that it's so possible. Anyway, this is being flippant, nevertheless. So A can be finite, could be infinite as well. But if it's finite, I cannot expect this set to be coherent already, right? I mean, I don't expect this to be common. So the idea is, you will give me these statements. What can I infer from these desirability statements that you've made? What can I do with them? And so this is where the coherence axioms come in. Because if I look closely at these coherence axioms, a number of them are basic statements like constants. If a gamble is positive, it must always be desirable. So all the positive gambles are desirable, they come for free. And then these two, if I have two desirable gambles, then I can create a new one, their sum. So this is like a production axiom. I can create a new one from old. And the fourth one is a production also, and the first one is, you can call it the destruction axiom. As soon as I get some zero in there, I'm lost. I'm becoming inconsistent because it ought not to be there. So that's a destruction axiom, if you want. Okay, so now the idea is I will call a set coherent if it satisfies these requirements. So a coherent set of desirable gambles is a set that satisfies all these requirements. And I will denote the set of all the coherent sets, so all the coherent models, I will denote by this bold D over bar. So those are all the coherent sets of desirable gambles. Those are the ones that are perfect in this sense. Yeah? Why do I assume D2? This is some kind of basic assumption. The idea is there are some gambles that are always desirable. There's a background of things that, even if I know nothing, I will always think that this is desirable. For instance, the positive ones. But these could vary in different theories. These background gambles, can be different. I'm just looking at one theory here, but the background gambles are just the ones that dominate zero. I'm just putting them in there. I could put another set in there. I'm just doing this as an example. Is that clear? Okay. Seems like a half-hearted okay, but okay. Anyway, right. So that's my that's coherence and the set of all the coherent ones. Now, and this is the interesting observation. This set of all the coherent sets is closed under arbitrary intersections. If I take a collection of coherent sets, any collection that is non-empty, and their intersection will also be coherent. If you look at the axioms, it's obvious. And this is, whenever you find something, a collection that is closed under arbitrary intersections, then you get, it's a very strong mathematical thing, you get closure. You get production. That is very simple, that's very general. If you have, for instance, the closed sets in a topology, closed under arbitrary, by definition, closed under arbitrary intersections, you get topological closure. So whenever you have something that is closed under arbitrary intersections, you can get to a closure operator. And so here as well. I define the deductive closure that is associated with my logic, take any assessment, look at all the coherent sets that include my assessment, and pick their intersection. The intersection is going to be coherent because if this set is non-empty. So if A is included in some coherent set, then this set will be non-empty and the intersection will again be coherent. Because coherence is closed under intersections. And it will, by construction, be the smallest coherent set that includes A, because it's the intersection of all the coherent sets that include A. So it will be the smallest one. So this operator takes any assessment and turns it into the smallest coherent set of gambles that includes it. That is what we call conservative inference. We take the smallest set that still includes all my assessments. In propositional logic, that is also what I do. If I have a number of propositional statements, I'm going to look at the deductive closure of that set as a set of all propositions that are implied by my propositions that I've taken as an assessment. The same here. It's completely the same thing. Deductive closure. So let me call a set deductively closed if it's equal to its closure. So in other words, if I have a deductively closed set, and I use the axioms, then I can produce new gambles, but those new gambles will already be in that set. That is what deductive closure means. And so what are the deductively closed sets? There are two kinds. The ones that are coherent, and then the ones that include zero. Because the set of all gambles is also deductively closed. If I take a set of all gambles, then when I use the axioms, it will still, when I use the deductive axioms, that is, I will keep adding gambles, but they're already in there because all the gambles are already in. So that is also closed. You can see that this formula, this set will be empty, because there is no desirable set of gambles that includes all gambles, because they are cones. Yeah? Can't be no net. Zero cannot be in there. So if A has zero, then there is no D. So this set is empty, and the intersection of the empty set is the entire space.
Is it possible to have sets that are disjoint and end up with an empty set?
Sets A that are disjoint?
Yeah. So
They
basically,
can't be disjoint because the coherent, the first ordinate is always in there.
I think on the second bullet point, deductively closed sets of desirable gambles, but LX is the set of all gambles,
Yeah.
including the undesirable ones, right?
Yeah, but it's deductively closed. That's my point. It's not coherent.
So it's the set of all deductively closed sets of gambles.
Yeah. So the idea is there are two possibilities. Either for the deductively closed set, it's either it's coherent or it's a set of all gambles. That's the idea. And the set of all gambles then represents contradiction. Because zero is in there, and the minus gambles are in there. So that represents contradiction. So this bold D is all the coherent ones, which avoid this contradiction, and then the single one, which represents contradiction. That's the basic idea. Is this clear? Because I see you stare. Yeah?
The word desirable shouldn't be there in the section. Unless I'm
No, the word coherent. It's not coherent. It's still a set of desirable gambles. You say that they are desirable, so I call them desirable. If you say so, why would I doubt you? So desirable means that you say so. But coherent means that it satisfies the axioms. And so coherent is not there in that sentence. So D over bar is the set of all coherent deductively closed sets. And there's one deductively closed set that is not coherent. That is the set of all. Yeah.
Is it like when you prove to absurdum in a logic?
Yeah.
But that's
All propositions follow from a false
when you
proposition.
get
That's
that's
that.
certainly
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. And it's the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you can just move on when this is too basic, but like, I'm just not sure I've really got my head around like the role of the notion of like, no, they're not closed sets, sorry, the previous notion, the coherent set.
Coherent. So coherent just means okay. It's what I think is okay. For a so coherence means okay. Yeah, like perfect. It's all deductively closed. I can't. Yeah. There's nothing more I can deduce from this that is not already there. All right. Yeah, yes, I need to repeat the question. Yes, yeah.
The consistency in an attribute is set of gambles.
Yeah, but it could also be a single gamble as a singleton.
What's the difference between consistency and coherence?
So consistency. What? Go back.
Next. Consistent.
Yeah. Okay. So consistency is a take any. So this is the last one here. So it takes a bit of unpacking. The question was, consistency. Well, could you repeat the question because I didn't
What's
get.
the difference between consistency and coherence?
Okay. So you start from an assessment, something that is not necessarily perfect yet. Yeah? So you've given me a few things, and then you say, what can I deduce from this? I can deduce from this the closure. This is what I said. The closure is what I can deduce from A by using the axioms. On and on and on and on until nothing changes. That closure, there are two possibilities. Either that closure is coherent, and then it's fine, then my closure gives me a coherent set, or that closure contains zero. In other words, it's equal to the set of all gambles. And then that means that what you've given me is inconsistent, because if I use the axioms, I can deduce from your assessment the zero gamble or a negative gamble. And that should not be the case. So you are being inconsistent. You should revise your assessment because what you've given me leads to inconsistencies. Is that clear? And that's what I mean by consistency, inconsistency in that case.
Yeah, so it's consistency is an attribute of an assessment.
Yeah.
While coherence is an attribute of a set
Of a set of gambles. An assessment could already be coherent. Yeah, if you give a lot of gambles, it could already be coherent. But then it would be inconsistent.
So closure, all limit points will be in set. Is that what you mean by closure?
No. It's not topological closure. It's deductive closure. It's like if you have a set of propositions, in deductive closure are all the propositions that you can derive it by doing proposition logic, using ways of it's not.
Okay. There are a couple of related questions in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I see them, so you'll have to.
Okay, so one was about the closure being the complex cone thing, which you just talked about. And then there's also what it is 1, -1, -1, -1, -1, -1, 1, 1.
What?
Yeah. Okay.
So they're not asking me to do exercises or what? Okay, the idea is if it's something negative in there, completely negative everywhere or something. Any other questions? Yeah.
Question just on the definition of closure of the various coordinates. I think questions like this, if you levels, so assessments.
Can you speak a bit louder, please?
So I think question was like if you did an assessment, whole space of gambles, they put it in there.
Yeah.
Then it seems to me that.
Yeah, and the intersection of an empty set is against the space of all time. Yeah. So the question was, if you put as A the set of all gambles in here, this set is empty, and the intersection is then again the space of all gambles. And that means that your assessment was inconsistent. All right. Any other? No? This is a long slide. Okay. And then the funny thing is, there's actually an expression for this when an assessment is consistent, then its closure is actually the smallest convex cone. This is POSI. The smallest convex cone that includes my assessment and all the positive gambles. So L greater than 0 is all the positive gambles. I add the assessment and I take the smallest convex cone that includes this. So this is my assessment here, the green gambles. You say that your assessment rather, and this is you say that you find these gambles desirable. I add positive gambles, and I take the smallest convex closure. Yeah. And this is the smallest convex cone that includes all my assessments and all the positive gambles. This is the closure. This is the how geometrically speaking we get to closure. And I can get back to your question, does it become untractable? Not if I have a finite number of assessments, then I get the extreme rays, and that is typically tractable. Unless your assessment is intractable, this will be tractable. And finding out whether something belongs to this set is just a linear problem. It's a satisfiability problem. It's a linear programming problem. So that's from the point of view of computability, it's okay. Fairly standard.
So, excuse me, so you mean that in 3 dimensions, we can only carry, we need to only carry out the exchange rate of the materials, right? Because it's a code. So,
Yeah. So you only need to specify the extreme rays of the code, in a sense. So that is enough to reason to do inferences.
so that means that it works for any dimensional, right?
Yeah. But in 2 dimensions, you only have, this is easy in 2 dimensions, you only have like two extreme rays. Yeah, so this is, in 2 dimensions, it's a very simple problem. But once you go to 3 and more dimensions, it becomes a bit more. Which is why I don't use it in my pictures. Okay, Kevin, you've been doing my job.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
You said that the intersection of the empty set is the whole set.
Yeah.
That's just an definition, or because recently
It's a definition of the intersection of the class. You can say it's by convention, or you can say it's by definition. But typically, the definition of the intersection of the class is the set of all the elements that such as for all the and this for all becomes vacuum, so therefore it's satisfied for everything. And so for all, you can say if my set is in there, then it must happen, but in there is never satisfied. And therefore the conclusion is always true. So this is why the empty set is everything. The intersection of the intersection is everything. Because the antecedent is never satisfied, and therefore the conclusion is always basic reason. Right. Conditioning then. So now we've done simple statements. What I'm going to do now is going to go to conditional statements. We're going to bring in conditioning, and the idea, this is a very basic idea, very simple idea. To bring in conditioning, I will introduce the notion of a called-off gamble. And this is, and Teddy will correct me, I think this is an idea that goes back to Bruno de Finetti. Yeah. So Bruno de Finetti was one of the first to introduce the notion of a called-off gamble in order to look at conditioning. So let's look again, we have an event A, and we're going to look at desirability statements conditional on this event A occurring. And again, I'm looking at this event A. It's a subset of the possibility space here, and the indicator is 1 on that set and 0 outside. Now, if I have a gamble G, then I will introduce a called-off gamble, which is just the product of G with the indicator of A. So this means that in any element X, if X is in A, then I get the product of 1 with G, so I get G of X. And if X is not in A, then I get the product of 0 with something, and that is also always 0. So the called-off gamble is equal to 0 outside A. So it's called off. There is no transaction. It's called off. There's no result. Unless I'm in A, unless the outcome is in A, unless the variable is in A, and then I get the value of the original gamble. So it's the original gamble, the gamble G that I had in the beginning, but called off as soon as I'm outside A. As soon as A does not occur, I'm setting the gamble to 0. So whatever happens outside A is just set to 0. That's a called-off gamble. That's a basic idea. And then things become very easy. Yeah? I can do a conditional assessment. I will say that G, the gamble G is desirable conditional on A, and I will take that to mean that I find the called-off gamble desirable. You find the called-off gamble desirable. Or in other words, you say that the code of gamble, or you put the code of gamble in your set, in your assessment, or in your set of desirable gambles. So if you have a conditional statement, all you do is you just look at the code of gamble and you put that in your assessment, and you use that code of gamble to do inference. That's it. That's it. So there's nothing special about this conditioning. You just change the type of gamble that you add to your assessments. This is how you get to conditional assessments. There's also an operation called conditioning. That is, if you have a set of desirable gambles, you can ask yourself, so you have a desirability model, and then you can ask yourself, what is the conditional model that I can derive from that? So how do I do conditioning? In that case, I have a conditioning operator, conditioning operation. I will denote that by bullet slash or bullet A, and it turns a coherent set of desirable gambles into a coherent set of desirable gambles, and that coherent set of desirable gambles, the image is denoted by D conditional A, D conditional. And the definition is the following: a gamble is in the updated or in the conditional set if and only if it is positive, because then it will always be in there, or if the code of gamble is desirable. So once you have a set of desirable gambles, D, you can go to a condition, you can condition on A by doing this operation. Just look at all the G that are either positive, so are in the background, or for which the code of gamble is desirable. That is a condition. So this is how you condition set of desirable gambles. There's no problem with sets of probability 0. No probability 0 in this picture. Always works. Unless A is empty. Always the condition will be set.
Why do we make that G greater than 0?
Because I want the result to be coherent. This does not imply that so it's possible that there are gambles in the gambles that you have in here may not include all the positive gambles. So this is just for safety. Yeah? If the gambles, if this set does not include all the positive gambles, I'm going to add them just to make sure that I'm okay. It's possible that they're all in there, and then this is just redundant. But just to make sure, I'm going to add them because I want to make sure that they're in there. Yeah?
Because the positive gambles might only have finite support. There might be 0 exactly where A has support.
Yeah. So that is quite simple.
Sorry. When you say code of gamble desirable?
When it's in your set of desirable gambles. So the idea is you gave me an assessment. This is all constructed, right? You've given me an assessment. A number of gambles that you find desirable. I take that closure. That is the result of all that you've given me. That is my set of desirable gambles. If a code of gamble is in there, happens to be in there, then that gamble will be in your DLA. So you construct a model, and then you look at all the code of gambles that are in there, and you use that to construct your conditioned set of desirable gambles.
Well, won't it be weird if we condition on an event A that rules out like the possibility of some outcome in X1, and G is the gamble that pays some unit just in case X1 happens? Yeah. So the definition implies that it's desirable conditional on A or conditional on X1 not happening.
No, it's 0, right? So it can't be in there.
Well, but G is still dominating 0 because every possible outcome, and it's not equal to 0. But it seems weird to say that something that's pays just in case something I condition on doesn't happen pays. Or
it still gives some value that is positive, but I can't exclude. I'm not, even if it's unlikely, I can't exclude.
So is this a model of conditioning where conditioning is not becoming certain of the thing we condition on?
What do you mean by certain?
Green is one, or
I haven't defined previous yet. We'll come back to that.
Can you go back?
Sorry?
Can you go back one slide?
Sure.
You said you want to include the G domains zero conditions in order for the condition for D conditional A to be coherent.
To be what?
To
Sorry.
be coherent.
Yeah. It must be in there, right? So I want to end up with a figure model. I'm just going to put them in there.
Just
I see, because the G is still defined on
Yeah.
the whole outcome space.
You could get rid of this if there's another way of doing conditioning by restricting then yourself to the set A and looking only at gambles on A, which I find more, I find that more appealing. But since I didn't want to go to the complexity of introducing a new set, this in a way response is an answer to what we would say. Yeah, you would say.
So conditioning doesn't belong to throwing away.
Yeah. So if you want to keep the original space, you have to include these gambles. If you want to restrict yourself to the ones that you know there, then you can also do that, but you get to a smaller space. And then you don't have to add this condition.
These aren't unconnected to the original.
They are connected.
The way in which
Yeah.
including a world in the space is kind of treating it as a live possibility. So you're not certain that it's not going to happen. If you want to be certain that it's not going to happen, then exclude it from the space. But then you don't have to include the possible.
Right, it depends on like whether probability zero is possible.
Yeah, but since I hadn't defined greens yet, I couldn't talk about probably. That's something a little bit. Okay. Right, so time for you now to do some exercises, right? How much time do we have left? Do you have left? 27, oh, lots of time. Right, so there's a football match next week between Marginal, which is your favorite team, and then the unspeakable team for many reasons, Ball. Right, and you are making the following statements about the outcome of this match, and the statements are for Marginal. Yeah? So a win for Marginal is more likely than a draw. And a loss is more likely than a draw. And if there's no draw, then a win is more than twice as likely as a loss. Then the question is, can you consistently bet on draw at rates higher than 1/2? When you use this sets, you can do this in many ways. You can do it using Creedle sets, but I want you to use sets of desirable gambles to find an answer to this question. So the idea is you have an assessment. The three statements there are assessments. So they are desirable gambles. So you have a space of 3 possibilities, I think: win, draw, and loss. So 3 possibility space. The gambles are just functions, so are points in this 3 possibility space. So the gambles are of this type, 3 numbers. Those are the gambles. A win is more likely than a draw. Will be a gamble that you find, will lead to a gamble that you find desirable. So you will have in your assessment a very specific gamble that expresses that a win is more likely than a draw. A loss is more likely than a draw, and if no draw, then a win is more than twice as likely. Represent that as an assessment, and then check whether if you add the assessment in back on draw at rates higher than 1/2, and your closure will include negative gambles, for instance, or other ways of checking that you have consistency. There may be some, well, there may be some confusion about the more likely statements. Let me give you one example about how to do or how I see it. There may be different ways of seeing it, but just to avoid any confusion, let's look at the first one. Win more likely than draw. What do I mean by that? It's mean that the indicator of win minus the indicator of draw is desired. That's what I mean by that statement. Okay.
Is that the same as the lower bound probability of win being higher than the upper bound of
No, no, no. But we haven't talked about probabilities yet. I would like you to solve this by desirability, not by probabilities. You can solve it by probabilities, but I want you to understand what the reasoning mechanism is behind gambles. I would like you to solve this. So the idea is first to translate the two assessments, the three assessments, into assessments of this type. So it took just, so if win is the first coordinate, loss is the second, and draw is the third, then this says that this gamble 1, 0, -1 is in my set of desirable gambles. And now the same for the others.
Strictly more like
Sorry?
strictly.
Yeah, strictly more likely. It will be strictly more likely also then, yeah. More likely, yeah. Tony tells me that, and he's right, so we need to assume that there's only three possibilities, that it's either a win or a loss, or there's no. Otherwise, yeah. But even then, I think.
Then it's still small.
You're there already?
Well, I guess.
Yeah, I'll come and check.
whether G.
Okay, I'm feeling that. I think I got this. Okay. Who's still at it? I'll wait a few. It's okay if I wait a few more minutes. Okay, I think most of us are ready. All happy enough? So who votes yes? Yes, we can consistently bet on draw at rates one higher, right higher than a half. Nobody. Whoever votes on no. Who wants to come and explain why he votes on no, or she votes on no? They vote on no. Come on, be brave. Shall I pick who somebody? You were first. Can you come?
So, do we have a
Maybe I can shoot you on the right.
I hear we're supposed to use black. Say that winning is more likely than drawing. To say that losing is more likely than drawing, and then let's just suppose for contradiction that we could consistently maintain not D is just the disjunction of winning and losing, So by the additivity property, you can do this. By the additivity property, you can sum them all up, which means that we'll get oh, sorry, delta is the indicator function. But the n tuple here will be strictly negative, right? So it'll be this one of minus 0. So, what's this? Maybe I'll just skip that. So that's a contradiction.
Is that clear? Yeah, okay. Fine. That's one way to do it. There's another way where you just, this is doing directly logical things. You can also say loss is more likely than draw, means that this one is in there. And then if no draw, then a win is more likely, so that's 0. And then a win is more than twice as likely as a loss, so I have 1 minus 2 is in there. And then I ask, can I add the gamble 1 minus 1/2 minus 1/2 0, which is conditional on no draw. Sorry. No, that is bet on, so that should be minus 1/2 here as well. So these are 4 gambles. And the idea is, can I find a positive linear combination of these gambles that is negative? And you can easily find one. You find a positive linear combination of all these gambles that is uniformly negative. Or at least
the final word, one minus the final word, and then the minus the draws.
so this one, this is no draw. Yeah, so it's called the final one. Indicator of, I'm going to draw on, we're going to, bet on draw, I'm sorry. Bet on draw, yeah, I'm sorry. So that should be 1/2 minus 1/2, yeah. So indicator of draw minus 1/2, which is minus 1/2 minus 1/2 plus 1/2. So, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. Then you can find a positive linear combination of these that is negative, which means that it's inconsistent. Yes.
Okay, I read the statement. Why don't you take into account the no draw condition? The no draw condition. That was the
Took, yeah, the problem is, where in this one?
yeah.
The problem is it's superfluous because the gamble that I'm conditioning is already 0. So, sorry, let me make it. The original gamble without conditioning is I win. What is it? Win is more than twice as likely, so I win minus indicator twice the indicator of loss. That is the gamble. Yeah? And then to call it off, no draw, which means win, loss. But this is equal to the original gamble. So I didn't have to take it explicitly into account. It's already in there. So this was like something to mislead you or lead you astray. Okay? Yeah. Sorry, you have to speak loud. The payoff?
Yeah, on the left hand side. Yeah.
On the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah, here, yeah.
Yeah, this one is undesirable, right?
Yeah, but so I'm going to assume it's desirable. And then
How did you get to that? Did you get that lot
from this one. So the idea is that suppose this is betting on draw at a rate 1/2. Anything higher is at a higher rate. I'm just taking the board. But this is something I said before. If I have an indicator of an event minus something alpha, this is like betting on the event and rate alpha. This is why I flagged it. Yeah, and so this means that in win I get minus 1/2. In lose I get minus 1/2, and in draw I get 1 minus 1/2 is 1/2. All right, let's call it a session. Ah, there's another question. This one? I have to ask you to do that. Yeah. Can you repeat your explanation there, please?
Since the thought is just that the first two statements of desirability come from the assumption of the problem. The third one, which has the multiplier 2, comes from the question we're asked. Can you bet on draw rates greater than 1/2?
Okay, that's what I don't understand. How do you get from the sentence to this line?
Sorry, how do you get from the?
How do you get from the sentence in the exercise to the third line?
So it's not in the exercise that the variable could be.
I don't understand the third line first of all.
Or like that's just
Sorry.
sorry.
The question is, why is indicator D minus indicator not D equivalent to?
Your assumption of contradiction. What does it mean?
I guess I just thought about I just thought that if you bet on an event at a rate higher than 1/2, that just means you think it's more likely than its negation.
Oh, this is another way of, okay.
Which is what
Oh,
indicators.
okay, so when you
So that's, yeah.
more likely that it was D and then you multiply by 2 and you use the disparity to
Yeah, that is.
some things. And why is your conclusion that the sum doesn't hold?
The sum is a contradiction because if you compute it, you'll find that it gives you an n-tuple that is negative in some places and 0 elsewhere. And that violates the assumption that all the dominant ones, the ones that dominate 0, are desirable, and the additivity assumption and the assumption that 0 is not desirable. Sorry. So I guess the intuition is that we're just giving an argument for the claim that the n-tuple, these payouts are sometimes negative and sometimes 0, cannot be desirable. That follows from the claim that all the ones that are sometimes positive and never negative are desirable, and the thought that 0 is not desirable, and the additivity property.
You didn't use the third property?
I didn't use the third assumption of the property.
No, you didn't. Well,
I also didn't use the assumption.
the double one here?
No, I think that just comes from thinking of draw is more likely than.
Yeah, that's the, can you consistently have a draw that rates higher than 1/2? Because he's interpreting that it's a draw is more likely than not.
Okay, yeah. But why the 2? Why the 2?
Oh, you could just add it to itself. You just needed to get the final.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Actually, maybe I don't need it. Maybe I could just add one of the equations. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, it's not very elegant.
All right. I think that let's call it a session and time for lunch, I think.